Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, this 2016 election is boiling down to be a bizarre affair. Once again, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media have selected the presumptive nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP. And of course, this time around, it is the New York vulgarian Donald J. Trump. But you know, things got even more bizarre when Trump called in, despite a moratorium against that, to the Fox News morning program, Fox and Friends, and when pressed by Brian Kilmeade, the very reporter that allowed Trump to get away with comparing or associating Texas Senator Ted Cruz's father, Rafael Cruz, with the JFK assassination due to some uncorroborated hit piece in the National Enquirer, when he pressed him on his statement of banning temporarily Muslim immigration into the United States, Trump all of a sudden started backpedaling, like he has been ever since Cruz officially suspended his bid for the White House. He came out and said, look, you know, I'm not president now. Anything I say now is just a mere suggestion, and it doesn't, you know, it's just a suggestion. I'm not president yet. And so basically, everything is a mere suggestion. It means that is the biggest cop-out that we will see throughout this entire election cycle. And the bizarre thing is he's trying to use that as an escape. And I've even got a clip of it here, a soundbite that I'll pull up. I'm going to switch over to it now and bring that up for you to hear, and then we'll discuss it in detail.
It was a suggestion. Look, anything I say right now, I'm not the president. Everything's a suggestion, no matter what you say.
So right there, you see that what he's trying to say is that everything that he has to offer is just a mere suggestion. That it means he can say anything. I guess this is down the same lines of I can go out onto Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I won't lose any of my followers. Folks, you really cannot make this stuff up. It is there, plain as day, clear and apparent, and it is dangerous.
I have a quick question, Randy. Why is it every time that he does some kind of interview over the phone, it sounds like absolute crap? I mean, yeah, sure, we've had our share of technical difficulties where, you know, we've had to be creative with the way we do our show. Mm-hmm. But even we don't sound that bad. But hey, I'm just making a suggestion here. You know, I'm not the president or anything. I'm just making a suggestion. So, I don't get it. People are still pandering to him. Why? Why do people pander to him? Well, it's just like I mentioned the other day in our previous shows, one of our previous shows. People are pandering to him, much like the German voters, the German citizens, pandered to Adolf Hitler when he was making all of his suggestions. You know, the suggestions that, you know, the Jewish population there were the scum of the earth and they needed to be eradicated, and a suggestion that he was going to revitalize the fatherland and blah, 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 zig quaff, Heil Trumpoline. You know,
well,
he needs to stop making suggestions.
Well, here's the thing. That's all he can do. Because when you stop and think about it, he really doesn't have any true positions. Everything that he's put forth is just a lie. And it's all done to be a type of political kabuki theater in which he's hoping to dupe the unwitting and unwilling American sovereign citizen. Of course, he doesn't believe that we're sovereign citizens. He believes that he should be able to run carte blanche over us, to have his way. He's always been that way because everything with him has always been about him. His life has always been this charade that's about Trump. Nothing else other than Trump matters. But when you stop and think about it, you can't run a country like that. That's not the way the real world works. But with Trump, he thinks everything's a business. Remember, we've said oft times on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that the United States of America cannot be run as a business. And this is exactly why. Because if you look at what he said in The Art of the Deal, which is his magic book that everybody says is so great and wonderful that it's like he built a tower and everybody's got to love his tower. Okay, he says that he will accept the most hardline position or promote the most hardline position so he can then work back to what his real goals are. So you see, we've been warning about this for 10 months straight now, that Donald J. Trump is not who he claims to be, that he is not looking out for the best interests of the American people, and yet our warnings went unheeded. People didn't want to pay attention to the warnings that we put forth. And now, I'm not saying that our cherished listening passengers and audience were the ones that ignored us. I'm talking about mutual acquaintances that we had that just drank the quaffade and couldn't see past their own egos. And again, remember when I said that this was them projecting their own self-worth onto him, making an image of him for the fulfillment and satisfaction of all of their hopes, dreams, and aspirations? This is what it's coming down to. We warned these people that this would play out as it is. Every prediction we've made is coming to fruition, but they chose not to heed our warnings. They chose to ignore everything that we had to say. And look at what that's going to do for the country. It is going to play out in a disastrous fashion because everything is just a mere suggestion.
But, we're the ones, of course, that are, lying about all this. We're the ones that are creating all these so-called conspiracy theories, whatever the case is. And again, who is it that is blaming everybody but Trump? Well, of course, all of his supporters. That is what their mantra is. It's, yeah, but Trump, yeah, but Trump, yeah, but Trump. You're to blame, yeah, but Trump. Trump can do no wrong. And again, we've talked about this before, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later on in this episode. But it points right back to their messianic figure, their Messiah, looking to save them. And again, how often have we said repeatedly, and I'll answer that right now, every show, that you cannot look to an individual to save you, no matter what party they represent, no matter how conservative they may be, no matter how principled their ideologies are within the Constitution. It is not that person's burden to bear. That burden was given to we the people.
And for good reason. Because
Yes.
if you stop and think about it, if you give someone the power and the authority to save the nation, one singular entity or individual or even branch of government, you are thereby handing that individual entity or branch of government the supreme power to not only, quote unquote, save the country, but to also destroy it. And look, I think Trump is unbalanced enough and so unstable that he would be willing to do anything against anyone who would say anything against him. Certainly his own past conduct clearly indicates that he would lash out against those who speak out against him. Look at how he said that he wanted to roll back the public figure exception for our libel laws so that he could quash free speech. Why would he want to quash free speech? Because he can't tolerate anybody calling him a loser. Well, Donnie, here's the fact. You are a loser when it comes to that fact. A winner is someone who couldn't give a damn what somebody's saying about them. They are secure enough in their own personal identity, their own self-image, and their own self-confidence that they don't care what others have to say because they know in their own mind that they have built success. And look, Donnie, you certainly have enough around you to allow yourself to be supremely self-confident, but you have this superiority complex that just shows each and every time you step in front of one of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. It doesn't play off well. It comes off like a schoolyard bully. But I think that's ultimately what you are. You haven't thought anything through because you are just impetulant. I mean, impertinent too, because you just go from one impulse to the next without thinking anything through. And there are unintended consequences that will result, particularly when you're trying to vie for the highest office in the land in what's supposed to be the leadership of the free world.
Well, again, that speaks volumes to the statement that he made when he says, look, you know, if I have to change to be something else in order to get something done, then I'll do it. So, in other words, going back to this, you know, public figure exception to prosecution, if somebody speaks out against him, he'll just, well, I'm just going to change into a tyrannical dictator just so that I can handle that and squash it. And then I'll change back to this messianic figure that everybody wants me to be and everybody's put me up on a pedestal to represent. The guy has no principles whatsoever. He doesn't even believe what he tells himself. And that's the most dangerous kind of individual. Again, that's not saying that Hillary is not dangerous, or Bernie Sanders, or John Kasich, or anybody else.
But we know that Hillary is going to play all of this to her advantage.
Yes, and we know what to expect from her, because she is so damn predictable. History shows us just how predictable she is. With Trump, it's kind of like taking Attila the Hun and Napoleon Bonaparte, wrapping them together and giving them a giant wig. You don't know what the hell's going to happen next. Trump doesn't even know what the hell's going to happen next. He's just flying by the seat of his China-made pants, and that's that. Or maybe it's Mexico. I don't know which one it is today. Maybe it's just a suggestion that who knows? He's not president yet, so it's very disturbing to see our fellow citizens behave in this fashion, that are with being so willing to delegate their authority to somebody to govern over us. And everybody's wanting to say, well, you have to vote for Trump. You know what? I don't have to do anything. And I'm willing to bet we're going to jump into that soon, too.
Well, of course we are. If you think about it, what they're trying to do is they want to be as much of a dictator as their leader. Mm-hmm. It's sort of that type of mob mentality that you always see with these tin-pot dictator types. Remember the Sturmabwehr, the stormtroopers, the brown shirts that Hitler had, or the black shirts that Benito Mussolini had? They all got into this thuggish mindset that they could do whatever they wanted to because they were following Il Duce. Il Duce. Well, the Trumpvidians are kind of a bizarre mixture of not only a blind following to a cult of personality, but they also have this thug groupthink or collectivist mentality. That in and of itself is dangerous, because it goes to show that they will be willfully blind to anything, and then if they perceive anyone as speaking out against their dear beloved fearless leader, they will strike out without hesitation, without second thought, without any type of reservation. Of course, does that fit in with the American spirit? No, not really, because our revolution, when you go back to the American War of Independence, was based in a logical, reasonable fashion and approach. Does that mean that there were times that violence didn't spill over into the street? Absolutely not. Violence was an integral part of the events that would lead up to the powder keg that would lead to the War of Independence itself. But we have to stop and think about it. Were the positions of our founding fathers consistent? Well, yes, they were. But what position has Trump committed to? We have to ask this. He won many disillusioned conservatives on bold proclamations. Now he backs away from them. As we said at the opening of the program, he accelerated this process ever since Texas Senator Ted Cruz officially suspended his White House bid. Nothing seems sacred to him. Again, it's all about Trump. But that won't serve us in the general election, and Hillary knows this. But again, Trump supporters don't care. They found a messiah, and that's all that matters.
I want to touch back on this groupthink mentality that they have. You know, and I liked how you put in there thuggery. See, this whole thing, it reminds me of nothing more than an organized gang, is what it is. Let's take any gang that you want to talk about, whether it's the Latin Kings, the Bloods, Crips, Cobra, whoever. Doesn't matter. Okay? Individuals will belong to a larger group of people for various reasons. Top three being, number one, they're too afraid to accept the reality of what individualism is, which, again, the United States was based on and rooted in a core principle of individualism. Individuality. Each individual person is a holder and wielder of the authority to delegate governance over them. In a gang, you don't have that. You have to do what the gang leader says. You have to follow the crowd. Number two, these individuals are weak. In fact, they're probably the weakest of the weak. Why? Because the gang mentality, and I've always held this belief, I don't care what the gang is, if you belong to a gang in this regard, that means you can't stand on your own 2 feet. That means you can't think. You can't fight for yourself. You're not willing to even take the opportunity to defend your own rights or your own life or your own well-being. You are relying on other people to do it. And all of these gang mentalities, they stem from something called communism. The collective, the greater collective. So essentially, the third part is, these individuals, not only are they ignorant of or willfully neglective of their own individualism, but they're weak, and they are doing nothing more than metamorphosizing themselves into a bunch of communist little spurts. And that's all they are.
And the other aspect of this gang mentality is they perpetrate this us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
And look at the way that Trump has come out now and essentially said that he doesn't need nor want the support or vote of conservative people and constitutionalist people like you, me, Ted Cruz, who have you. And so, in essence, he wants conservatives to leave the Republican Party. He came out and said that it's the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party. Why? Well, he claims that he'll bring in Sanders voters, once again tying into the socialist, communist aspect of it. How will this help the party?
He's going to build a wall for them to stand behind, too.
Oh, sure. But there's no clear answer. No clear answer. Like everything Trump says, it's mere fluff. The man has no substance. As critically acclaimed author Brad Thor recently said,
yes,
Trump has more positions than a porn star.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a more apt way to describe the freak show that is Trump. It best illustrates his waffling.
I love that line. That's just... That absolutely must go down history as one of the best one-liners in the political arena ever. It's bigly, it's hugely, and it's going to be one of the bigliest, hugeliest, bestest lines ever. Trust me, and I'm not just suggesting this either.
Believe me. Yeah,
believe me, I know.
But, speaking of waffling and flip-flopping, it didn't work for Kerry in 2004, nope. but Kerry now claims that he wishes Europeans could have voted for him in 2004. Now, that indicates that he never had America's best interests at heart. Of course, that shouldn't surprise anybody. Kerry was a weak candidate, and there are many parallels between Trump and Kerry. Both of them don't have any true core convictions. But to be fair to Kerry, he was more committed to a solidly leftist ideology. Trump is a leftist, but plays the role of a conservative. This allowed him to dupe disillusioned conservatives, and that makes him the Pied Piper of disillusioned conservatives. On social issues, Trump is a disaster. Trump made the rounds of the morning talk shows again, and when pressed on Obama's transgender edict, he claims to have no positions. That's not the position he took with respect to North Carolina's natural gender law. Of course, the Branch Trumpidians will ignore this. They think Trump can do no wrong, or they say he learns on the fly. What?
Wait. He learns on the fly. So I guess we can look into his positions, going off what Brad Thor said, not only regarding military policy with him, watching shows like, F Troop and MASH to learn foreign policy and military strategy, the A-Team, for regarding things pertaining to the, NSA and the CIA. Well, he watches MacGyver for that. And apparently...
for the bubblegum on that, he's now saying that it should be a states' rights issue. But I thought he said that the state shouldn't handle it, that they should have just left things alone. Yeah. And then remember how Caitlyn Jenner made a media spectacle out of Trump's offer for him to use the ladies' room?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my God, moral relativism doesn't work. It's part of the same sickness as political correctness. Yeah. We, on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have declared war on these things. America must return to sanity. Maybe Trump's positions on North Carolina were mere suggestions as well. I have a feeling that's how they're going to try and paint this one.
Now, Randy, we could actually run with this, with the whole Caitlyn Jenner thing, the Bruce Jenner thing. It's pretty suggestive of him to, talk about this whole gender bender bathroom thing, or as what I'm calling it now, and I'm going to refer to this whole fiasco as
just because he wants
gender
better
binge.
Hair care products. He just wants better hair care products.
Yeah, and
Look
I'm
at
going
Caitlyn
to
Jenner's hair.
Yeah, I'm going to refer to this whole fiasco as a gender binge. That's what Trump is on. He's on a gender binge. That's what it is. I mean, he wants to pander to everybody because he cannot afford to have nobody's vote. So he wants to take a little bit of vote from here, a little bit of vote from this group, a little bit of voting from this group, bring everybody together, and then he can claim, oh, it's unity. Trust me, I know what unity is. I've built companies on unity, and I've fired a lot of people that didn't want to become unified. But, unions this and unions are all big part of the unity aspect. This guy is such a twisted eraserhead of a moron. He has no clue about what's going on, and it's just like you said, with regard to his positions. He is now, I wouldn't put it past him to watch pornography in order to gain, that position there, I like it, it's little, like Twister and this and that, but hey, maybe I can use that, to work with, the illegal immigration thing, and that's his words, not mine, because he's not smart enough to understand what illegal aliens are.
Well, here's an interesting thing. Trump is also claiming that he won't release his tax returns until this audit that he apparently has every year is over. Remember, that was a sticking point during the primary process. Mm-hmm. Yet what Trump is claiming actually isn't accurate. Richard Nixon released his tax returns when under audit. So now we see that Nixon was far more honest and open than Trump. Boy, that's going to play well with Hillary, that was involved with the whole Watergate thing.
It's funny how and how ironic it is that Richard Nixon actually plays into this. Even this whole topic, with the nickname of Tricky Dick. I mean, it's just it's got to be.
Deep Throat, all of that stuff too.
Sure, yeah, and it again, what makes him think, or what makes other people think that he is better than anybody else? We know Richard Nixon was not a conservative, absolutely not a conservative. He wasn't even a very good Republican. He was more of a J. Edgar Hoover and drag type Republican. Log cabin basement Republican, if you will. But it's the whole aspect, people are, again, aggrandizing him and glorifying him as if he's some kind of savior.
Well, speaking of expletives deleted, we know that when asked by Joe Scarborough what his tax bracket is, Trump responded that the people don't have a right to know. We do have a right to know, since he's running for president. Again, Trump doesn't seem to recognize he's running to be a public servant.
Mm-hmm.
Trump's never been a servant. He's only ever had servants. And by the way, his manservant there, his little butler, is under investigation for making threats against Obama. Of course, that doesn't mean anything. But I just have to laugh at that. Again,
that is pretty funny.
Hillary will destroy him with this in the general election. Let's not also forget that class warfare is the top prerogative of Sanders supporters. How will Trump court them, being the very thing they hate the most? Again, there's no answer for this.
Well, and this also brings up the fact that we've made on previous episodes regarding Hillary versus Trump. She does not even need to talk about the issues that people really care about. You know, and when we talk about the issues, for us, Randy, it's not the economy. The economy is a subset. It's a sub-issue, okay? For true conservatives, individuals with the understanding of the Constitution is the issue because it encompasses all other issues. You get back to the Constitution, following the Constitution, and applying it in the true spirit in which it was written, all the other issues will go away. They will fix themselves. This is what people don't understand. I've been saying it for years. You've been saying it for years. Long before the Wright Flyer existed in its capacity today. And we've warned about this again. For 10 months, we have been warning people. It's kind of like, you know, a tornado siren going off, and people are just so dumbfounded by the noise, they have no clue what the hell's going on. And guess what? An F5 Finger of God twister is about ready to rip their flesh from their bones. Because they're too stupid to get the hell out of the way, and they want to contribute to the destruction. It's asinine. It's beyond imbecilic.
Well, it comes down to they've been blinded. They are willfully blind. They're allowing their emotions to take control. And when you allow your emotions to take control, you are exposing yourself to being manipulated by a con artist and a snake oil salesman or a carnival barker. And with Trump, you've got all three rolled into one horribly wigged package. I think the hairpiece holds it all together, but really what it comes down to is these people are pinning and projecting their hopes, their dreams, and their aspirations onto him because they think that that's going to somehow make their life better. But just like too much bleach on hair, it's not good for you. It really is not good for you to turn to this bleached coif to think that moose pelt and that skunk pelt that he's mixed together is going to be good. Because really, what this nation needs is someone who stands on principle, who is unwavering in his or her convictions to the Constitution. It's why we've said, dating back to our first episode, that the Constitution is the most important thing out there, because it delineates the proper scope and application of government.
Well, it's not only the most important thing, but it's the key and the lock working in tandem with each other. And what's happened is we have some drunken buffoon, and I say drunken buffoon because he's drunk with power, coming home after a gender binge at the local Twisted Triangle, fumbling around with the lock on his door with the wrong key, getting it stuck, putting it in, pulling it out, putting it in, pulling it out, trying to turn it and breaking. What? I'm assuming so. It has to be in this case because, again, the Constitution is the key and the lock. They both have to work in sync with each other as far as the way it operates. Okay, the key aspect would be the understanding of the principles of the founding morals and underlying roots of the Constitution.
Yeah,
and then,
what it means to be a virtuous republic. Sure. And we'll definitely get into that in more detail as the show goes on. So you were saying about the key and the lock.
Yeah, well, like I said, the key is actually the people's understanding of the Constitution, the core values, the principles, where and how it's rooted in natural law. The lock is the applicability of the Constitution, the application of it. Taking the key and using it to put into the lock, or using it in tandem with the lock, and allowing it to function. When you turn that key, the grooves and valleys that are cut into that key manipulate the various different tumblers within the lock. So when people have an understanding with being the key, they insert themselves into the Constitution. That's where the applicability begins, and that allows everything to work in tandem. Mm-hmm. Again, Drumpf isn't wanting to do that. He's wanting to take every single key except the one that utilizes and works the lock in the functioning manner, i.e. people who have no concept of the Constitution or don't even care to. Those are bad keys. Those keys will get snapped off. They will become useless. They will not be able to operate that lock the way it's supposed to.
Well, it's because he's bought into this totalitarian power. He's on that binge. And we can see this, too, in the way that he attacked Cruz for his wife working for Goldman Sachs. But now we see that the campaign finance chair that he has for his campaign is a partner at Goldman Sachs and also worked with George Soros's financing companies. And it really comes down to now Trump is saying that he won't rule out paying back primary season debt from new donations. I thought Trump was self-funding. Isn't that what the Trumpidians championed him for during the primaries?
Nothing as the ultimate outsider?
Yeah, nothing is ever as it seems with Trump. We warned that he's consistently inconsistent. He has always been consistently inconsistent, at least since he threw his hat into the ring back during last July. The fact of the matter is, the American people cannot afford to have him be our next commander-in-chief. He is not of the type of caliber or character of someone who would do well in that office. He is threatening the very way of life of the American people. And we recall that he also stood for federal government intrusion in the westernmost states with land ownership. Remember, he was against all of that. He wants there to be so much centralized federal control. But then he waffles back on that with this transgender bender bathroom issue with dear sweet Caitlyn Jenner and all that crap, when he says that he now thinks it's a state's issue and that he doesn't have an opinion on it. Well, how can that be when he clearly went out and stated that North Carolina's legislature was wrong to try and preserve the status quo after these Fabian socialists were doing what Fabian socialists always do, in trying to transform this country away from being a true representative republic that's designed to protect the rights of everyone. And you see, that was one of the things he kept repeating ad nauseum when he was in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. He kept saying, everybody needs to be protected, but it's such a new issue, I can't have a say in it or an opinion right now because I built a tower and I got smally hands, and my hair, it looks terrible, but, I'm great and wonderful. But he was basically saying it's states, but everybody needs to be protected. Again, is it necessarily government's job to protect everyone? Or is it government's job to provide a steady, stable platform for the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty to protect themselves? Stop and think about why we have the Second Amendment included in the Bill of Rights or first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. It's because the onus of our protection is our own responsibility. It falls to us. We are the ones that are tasked with that to ensure that our own safety is there. And in fact, the Supreme Court has said as much, in so much as the police are not there to protect you, they are merely there to maintain order for society itself. These are the facts that are plain and simple for everyone to see, but far too many in America want to see a messianic figure save them, as you had mentioned in the opening segments. Well, you can't have that Messiah. A messianic figure is not what is going to help this country. It is going to have to come down to the rugged individualism that gave birth to this country over 230 years ago. We've lost sight of that spirit.
Well, I'm going to go back again to the analogy that I made 6-8 months ago regarding the Israelites that fled Egypt when Moses was up on Mount Sinai getting the Ten Commandments. And you had one individual, Dathan, who got everybody whipped up into a frenzy and got them to just complete heathenistic behavior. Orgies, violence, this and that. No, there was no law, total chaos, right? And it was Dathan's idea, again, to build a false idol, the golden calf. Or in this case, it would be Trump.
And the golden quaff.
The golden quaff, exactly. You took it right out of my mouth. The golden quaff. That's what his ideologies are. Again, idols, ideologies, it's something that, people are worshiping what he is saying. His ideologies have become the golden quaff. This is a problem, folks. This is what happens when you abandon your principles rooted in natural law tenets.
Well, you see, he doesn't believe in the natural law. He only believes in himself. That has always been the problem with Trump. Everything always comes back to him. And that's basically and essentially what he said in The Art of the Deal. Everybody seems to think that he's such a great negotiator, but when you look at the way he's trying to treat conservatives as we come up to this all-important general election season, he's not attempting to negotiate with us. He's engaging in demagoguery, and that is the last thing that we need to see in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. But again, for Trump, there is no greater good. There is no larger picture to focus on. There is nothing other than Trump himself. He has always been that way. It has always been that way about him. And so we see that in the way that he treats his family, in the way that he's treated other nations. Oh, and by the way, this idea that he wants to basically print more money and then run out on the creditors that have been loaning to America. Guess who it is that buys most of those treasury bonds and loans? It's we the people. Most of the people have their 401ks based on that. In other words, he's wanting to dump on the American retirees. Haven't we already done enough of harming our retirees? Haven't we taxed them enough already? What is it with Trump that he thinks that he can just default on these things? That was a sacred trust and a promise made to these people. It is a legally binding contract. But again, that doesn't matter to Trump. He doesn't care because, again, it doesn't directly impact him. And he made a similar statement to that when he was talking about his previously contradictory statements with respect to the transgender type issue and the state right issue. He said that at that time it didn't impact him. Well, then why was he saying something different? Why would that be the point that he would turn on and focus upon? Again, he is so self-centered and so selfish that he cannot see beyond himself. Didn't we get enough of a man-child in the two disastrous terms of this Barack Hussein Obama regime? I certainly think we did.
I want to point something out here with regards to the whole states' rights thing and the statements that he made. And he says it doesn't really impact him. Well, let's look at this. When you are willing to waffle and actually take no stance whatsoever on a particular issue, such as whether it's gay marriage or it's,
Quaff waffles,
or individuals who are sexual deviants and perverts and predators who are now going to use the law to say, well, I feel like I've always been a woman and this and that, and then they go into women's restrooms, public restrooms, and prey on unsuspecting, innocent little young girls. And then their whole defense is going to be, well, I didn't really do that. I was just in there because, I have the right to choose this and that. Which, by the way, I don't know if, I'm sure you've seen it, Randy, but I'm not sure if all of our cherished listeners and passengers have seen it, but Obama is set to sign this piece of legislation or this executive order, whatever it is, that is going to require all
he's already signed it.
Yeah, all public restrooms. All public in schools.
So locker rooms, public restrooms. You're going to have gender neutrality there because you've got to be all inclusive. Of course, does this have anything to do with what's happening in the real world? No. It's just exactly what they always want to do, and they just care about themselves. Yeah. And we deserve and demand better than that. The United States of America, yes, we are about equality, but a true sense of equality. That means equal protection under the law. It means that no one group of people should be given special treatment because we are a nation of laws, not of men. And what that all speaks to is that you cannot have a color of title. You cannot have some aspect about you be superior to anyone else. The only way you gain a superior position is through your own efforts, through your own initiative, through your own creativity. But to those that want to push this social Marxist agenda, they don't care about that. It's all about collectivism, and they hide it and disguise it with this erroneous notion of equality. But that doesn't work in this country, and we see right through it. That's part of the whole cancerous doctrine of political correctness, which again has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States.
And with this particular issue, with this law, so-called law, again, it's going to create the defense for these sexual deviants and perverts to use that as a defense. Now, here's the thing. All of the Trump supporters out there, regardless of what Trump said on this whole issue, they're still going to support him, which means, by proxy, they are supporting this law. Well, I don't agree with this. There shouldn't be gender-neutral bathrooms in all the schools in this. Well, Trump supports it, and you support Trump, so by default, you're supporting this law. And that's the issue. These people are so blinded by their emotional retardedness that they just can't get it. They'll talk about their principles all day long. They'll say what their principles are. They believe in this, this, and this. And as soon as Trump speaks, it's like their principles just evaporate. It's like they never even existed. And there's another problem.
We've even heard it. We've heard them say that they don't want there to be social conservative issues anymore. That's not what's important. It's all about the economy.
And when you bring the facts to them, their response, I don't care.
Or
really?
Yeah, but Trump.
Yeah, but Trump. Now this creates a larger issue, and it goes back to what initially with what the states' rights issue was, so to speak. I don't believe that states have rights. States have delegated authorities, because the rights that people want to take with the states, those are the rights of the people who delegate those authorities. So it's the people's rights of that state to delegate that authority. Okay? Now, what this issue is going to do is you're going to have, let's say there's one state that passes a law that says, well, we allow gender-neutral bathrooms, but you don't. And if we have a field trip going from our state to your state, and if you don't have, because under our laws, you don't have the same laws we do, we're going to sue you. This is going to open up for another violation of the Constitution by way of the 11th Amendment. The 11th Amendment prohibits states from suing each other, filing suit against each other. This is going to completely eradicate that. This is another instance of them using people's emotions and using the Constitution to twist it in order to destroy the Constitution. And people just don't get it. They don't want to get it. Why? Because they don't care. That's their problem. They don't care. They even say so much as, I don't care. Well, if you don't care, then why in the blue hell are you still living in my country? Get out now.
You know, it really has to come down to a focus on what is important in America. What is it that unifies us? It is the Constitution. It's certainly nothing else. And that's why when Trump is calling for all of this unity, the way that he just treats those of us that are pure constitutionalists with this outright dejection and hatred, that sneering attitude that he takes with us, it's why it annoys us and drives us further away. There is no way that he is going to be able to bring about a unification of the conservative movement. And I think that's exactly why he says that he's not going to. That's why he's being a quaff-waffle, because he doesn't care about the American people who really push for the Constitution. In all actuality, he doesn't care about anybody but himself. The only reason that he cares about the electorate right now is he sees them as political pawns. Mm-hmm. He sees them as tools for amassing even greater power for himself.
Useful idiots.
Well, even less than that, because that would still give them a modicum of humanity. He doesn't even see them as human. He sees them as pawns on a checkers board, because clearly he doesn't play chess. He even said so in The Art of the Deal. He said, we don't need chess players anymore. Well, yeah, we kind of do. But you remember on yesterday's Solo Flight special, I mentioned that Jeff Bezos, that owns Amazon, also owns the Washington Post. Well, now Trump is whining that he's being unfairly targeted because Bezos is going to dig up some dirt on him. Well, I don't remember there being any outrage when the National Enquirer, run by his dear friend David Pecker, that's why Trump loves Pecker, shamefully attacked Cruz. Sorry, I have no sympathy for Trump. He brought this on himself, and the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism to the salivating mainstream media should have been doing this months ago. Jeremy, I said this would happen. You said this would happen.
Yeah, we said this 10 months ago.
Yeah. Now that he's been selected by the media, they'll turn against him. The general election will be an unmitigated disaster. Of course, that raises the question of whether we could mitigate the damages downstream, because we face the very real possibility of losing the Senate and possibly even the House this election, all thanks to the profane style and delivery of the New York vulgarian.
Well, and he doesn't want this. He thinks it's unfair. You know, I don't want it to, you know, it shouldn't impact me, just like anything else, you know, it doesn't really impact me because I think I'm above the law. You knew this was coming. This is part of the game. When you threw your hat into the ring, when you stepped onto that court in that field, you knew this was going to happen. You can't say that you didn't because, again, how old are you? 71 years old? You knew this was going to happen. You've watched how many political campaigns, contributed to how many of them. You know this happens. In fact, you are part of this actually happening as well. You have actually had news media sites, or supposed news media sites, more or less, Printly.com, Red State Watcher, all these other ridiculous little entities that are no longer going to exist after this election campaign. They're going to go the way of Infowars.com, CoastToCoast.com, all these other Trumpspiracy and conspiracy sites, and will have no validity. The only way the reason why they have traction now is because you're pushing them. That's it. That's the only reason why. And those are the only individuals that are going to come to your defense only because you're paying their salaries.
Yeah.
And that's it. The media is going to abandon you. Why? Because you've abandoned everything else, including principles, assuming that you've ever even had any principles.
Well, speaking of lacking principles, John Boehner says he doesn't agree with everything Trump says, but he did admit to voting for Kasich and now fully supports Trump. And he also took time to trash Ted Cruz again, saying that jerk from Texas didn't win, thankfully. Well, you know what, John Boehner? Why don't you take your orange Oompa Loompa posterior take the dancing quaff with you and go straight to hell. We're sick and tired of your mindless, drunken, babbling, crying worthlessness. You are a terrible Speaker of the House. You are a terrible representative for the state of Ohio. You are a terrible... I can't even call you a human being, because that would be an insultment to humanity. You are disgusting. But again, this is just more proof that Trump is a politician and a political insider. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the support of somebody like a John Cry Me a River Boehner.
Tammy Faye Boehner.
Yeah,
Tammy Faye Boehner.
But again, the Trumpidians will keep stoic silence in the face of these realities. We warned of this as well. The Trumpidians are becoming more vitriolic as the general election approaches. They now claim that the never-Trump supporters of Ted Cruz are treasonous. I kid you not, Jeremy.
Well,
they claim that we are treasonous.
Well,
ever since our first episode, we've warned of the dangerous game of semantics. Trumpidians are acting like a cult. Well, of course they are. They've bought into the Vulgarians' cult of personality. This won't help us in the general election. It certainly won't swing Sanders voters our way. I thought Trump was supposed to be the great negotiator, yet he isn't even attempting to negotiate with us. In my mind, it makes him more of a demagogue.
Well, this is what I have to say to all of these Trump-tardians out there. Number one, you are not big enough or possess the anatomical equipment to call me a traitor to my face. Period. And for those of you who have served our country in the military, I thank you for your service. But know this. In supporting Trump, you have tarnished your oath. You have absolutely tarnished your oath. Why? Because you were supporting somebody who has no principles rooted in the Constitution. If you want to look for them, I'll tell you exactly where to look. Article 9, Section Existent, Clause 0. That's where you'll find them. And because you took an oath to uphold, protect, and defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, keyword there being domestic, as in referring to Trump, you individuals want to call me a traitor, want to call Randy a traitor, you won't dare do it to our faces. I guarantee you, you will not call me a traitor to my country, to my face. Just because I've never served in the military? You know, I used to regret that. I used to dwell on that. Until individuals like Randy and our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward, to name specific individuals, have kind of, showed me a different way of looking at that. I'm serving my country because the uniform I'm wearing happens to be the core values, principles, morals, and ethics that are deeply rooted, beyond deeply rooted in the United States Constitution. That is my uniform. My uniform is my sovereign citizenship. And if anybody wants to try and take that away from me, you're not big enough. There is nobody walking on this green earth big enough to take that away from me. So if you must and you want to try, you're more than welcome to. I surely do need the practice.
It just goes to show that these people are divisive, and it shows that we have certainly seen the most divisive and heated and contentious election cycle, and this has all been encouraged by the New York Vulgarian. He has purposefully pushed us to the point of being at each other's throats, and it's all by design. This is all part of some twisted machination of divide and conquer. And of course, it leads me to that question that I've asked before, which is, maybe this was his intent from the beginning. It certainly seems that way. All of the evidence seems to point to it as being his goal from the get-go. And Americans deserve and demand better than this. We are all the popular sovereigns of the greatest, longest-lasting, most open and honest representative Republican form of government that this world has ever seen. It's why our Constitution is the longest contiguous-running constitutional document in all of world history. But the branch Trumpidians don't care. They just want to burn the whole damn thing down. They think that that's going to help them or to push them into some better spot. It's going to make them feel better about themselves. Why? What is it that's missing in their lives that they need to try and fill it with somebody like Donald J. Trump? For the life of me, I have not understood this fatal attraction that they have to the orange coif-wearing moron. I just don't.
Well, that makes two of us, Randy. And again, there are no answers to that question. There are absolutely zero answers to that question. But there is an answer to the question of how to solve that problem. And that answer is the United States Constitution, our shared Constitution. It's all about, again, what we do. We bring the facts, we bring the history, we bring the education and the applicability of the Constitution. We offer solutions. What other radio outlet, what other media outlet offers solutions?
Well, it's got to be. We have to.
I can only think. I can think of only two that even come close to offering any modicum of a solution aside from us, and that would be Mark Levin and Glenn Beck.
Yeah.
Every single other one, whether it's Hannity, Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, so on and so forth. Yeah, they're right on certain things. Yes, they make resounding points, but it's kind of like, flushing the baby out with the toilet water, Randy.
Yeah,
it really is, because they have so many contradictories.
Line up with the rocket surgeons like Ben I'm a Victim Carson. You see,
and get the brain scientists while you're at it.
Yeah, well, what it really comes down to is the Constitution has been with us since the beginning, and it is something that we have to work for and work towards, because it defines not only who we are as a nation, but as who we are as citizens and what the proper scope and application of government is. And when we get away from it, that's when you start to see all of these side issues become ultimate concerns. That's where the penultimate concerns start to dominate for everyone else. They start to see this as their way of trying to fix a problem with the country, instead of looking at the root cause of it. So if you have cancer, they're going to be trying to treat your limbs or some other aspect of it that doesn't matter or that won't treat the underlying problem. But when you do that, you're not solving the problems that face the country. You see, what we want to do here is empower our cherished listening passengers and audience to give them the tools that are necessary to foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of the United States Constitution, and because through that they will be able to stand up to all of those forces that would move to strip them of their rights as popular sovereigns. We believe in the popular sovereigns, just as our founding fathers did. But you see, with people like Donald J. Trump, they want to paint that off as being some radical or some fundamentalist position. They try and compare us to ISIS even. And I think that Trump's walking a tightrope here, because he knows, at least at this point, he can't totally abandon the base, but he's thinking that he can augment it with the Sanders supporters and thereby redefine the Republican Party. But that's not what we need. What we need is to fight the Fabian socialists who are doing everything in their power to tear this country apart at the seams. They have been working incessantly, tirelessly, towards the ultimate destruction of the United States of America. And that cannot be acceptable. It's just like those who would abandon their oath of office, as you said. Mm-hmm. What good are they doing? Why have they abandoned their oath? They have abandoned it because they are to the point now that they are so angry, that they are driven blind with rage and fury, that they just want to see everything fall apart. But if we allow everything to fall apart, we have to think about the consequences of what's going to follow that. How are we going to rebuild the nation? How are we going to return to a constitutional system like that devised by our founding fathers? That very system that worked flawlessly for 230 years, or at least almost flawlessly. Yes, the Fabian socialists have been infiltrating it for the past century and a half. We have been very slow to respond to that. Well, it is time that we work out a plan that centers around the Constitution and not just expect instant gratification, because you're not going to find instant gratification in this instance. And we'll get even more into that as the show goes along. But right now, the main thing is we want to empower the people to stand up and say no. Because what these forces that are challenging us right now are saying is that they can destroy us. Well, the answer is no. No, they cannot. Now, old Eric Bolling, who has been just a Trump-vidian this entire election cycle, is now doing the same thing that Charlie Hurt over there at the Drudgy Report did, in saying that all those conservatives who have any type of reservation with respect to Donald J. Trump just need to shut the hell up and get in line and accept Trump. Why is it that we always see with these people that we have to accept them as some sort of purveyor of truth, that we have to accept their tyranny of false unity? I'm sorry, but a tyranny of false unity has no place in an open and honest republic like that of the United States. But you know, I have a feeling that Eric Bolling, who said on numerous occasions that he doesn't even know what Trump's positions are, that he doesn't care what Trump has to say, doesn't really know what's going on. That, in and of itself, should be enough to send up red flags for decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens. But we see that this has played out time and again, all throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle. And I, for one, am sick and tired of the circus carnival sideshow, freak show that this has devolved into. It's like we've said on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, civil discourse is not a part of political correctness. Civil discourse is part of what's necessary for a healthy and functioning society. But Donald J. Trump has made a mockery of our entire electoral process. He certainly made a mockery of our entire primary and caucus season.
Well, here's the thing, folks. We haven't done one of these in quite some time. And I've been meaning to bring this up to Randy. And I'm sure he's thought about it. We just haven't spoken about it. But we have what's known as a no-fly list. Guess what? Mr. Hurt and Mr. Bolling have just gotten grand prize recipients to be added to our no-fly list as they both go to hell. I'm going to tell you what, Eric Bolling. And I'm willing to bet that you, just like Trump, won't even come on our show, probably won't even respond to us, is probably falling on quaff ears, but it needs to be said nonetheless. Go to hell.
Yeah.
You have no idea what you're talking about. You think what, because you're on some, prime time or midday or mid-evening, early evening wannabe reality show where you could sit there and poke your finger in other people's chests and tell them what to do? Why don't you find out where I'm at? I'll give you a clue. Flint, Michigan. And come and poke your finger in my chest and tell me to shut the hell up and get in line. It seems that you want to be one of those individuals who is wielding the hammer to bend over or bend down or beat down the nail that sticks up. Guess what? You're going to find out what happens when the unstoppable object meets the immovable force. That's what's going to happen to you. You can't make me go away. You're not going to bend me down. You're not going to bend me over. You're not going to do anything. Why? Because you are a coward. You have drinking the quaffade. You want to fall in line. That's your problem, not mine. All of this blame that you want to project onto me and fall in line with so-called me being a traitor? Guess what? You're the one who's a traitor. All you Trump supporters are the ones who are traitors.
I'm getting sick and tired of people misusing that phrase, treason or traitor. It's as though they think that there is no legal ramification or application to that term. It's like the misuse of the term war. We've seen it with that erroneous made-up doctrine of the so-called Republican war on women, the war on drugs, the war on this,
poverty,
the war on that.
Yeah.
It's time to stop that kind of nonsense. Remember, we said, going back to our first episode, which aired on September 11th of 2015, that when you try and play these twisted games of semantics, it does not work. It's trying to make weasel words, trying to dupe people through obfuscating the truth. But that does not play out well for an organized, well-developed society like that of the United States. What we need right now is to go back to the Constitution. That was something we had the choice to do, but people like Eric Bolling didn't want to cover the truth. People like Sean Hannity didn't want to cover the truth. In fact, Hannity went so far as to claim, rather laughably, that he was objective throughout the primary process. Now, I haven't watched Hannity for years because I couldn't stomach him for that long. But there is no doubt in my mind that he was anything but objective. He had even said before Cruz had dropped out that he was going to help manage Trump's delegate count and massing up there in Pennsylvania. Why on earth are these people trying to claim to be conservatives? They need to abandon that right here and right now. And that comes down to one of the major things that we need to have addressed with respect to the New York Bulgarian. He is saying that it's not the Republican Party, that it is the Republican Party, excuse me, but not the Conservative Party. He's saying that because there is such a thing as a Conservative Party in New York, because New York has gone so far to the left, particularly with respect to New York City, that they had to create a conservative party because the Republicans are damn near the same thing as the Democrats. Well, if you're going to be president, you need to have American values, not just New York values. Yes, conservatives were in the Republican Party. If you don't need us, like you said you don't come crying to us when you lose. Don't come crying to us when we resist you because you said you are against us. That, to me, says that you are in need of resistance, and that is exactly what I will do. It's exactly what Jeremy will do. It's exactly what our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward, would do. Why? Because we believe in self-preservation. We believe in the true autonomy of the ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people. And the problem is, Hannity used to say that that's what he believed in. He clearly has sold that out.
Well, since they're so apt and willing to abandon whatever principles they may have once held, why don't they just go ahead and abandon conservatism altogether? I mean, honestly, that's the last step for them. It's almost like they want to hold on to it in order to try and lord over us, you know, with their actions. Them thinking they could tell us to shut the hell up and just fall in line. Well, who the hell are you? Who the hell are you? Heinrich Himmler? Really? You're telling us to shut up? You're sitting there violating my rights. Violating my rights, telling me what to do. You do not have the authority, nor does anybody have the authority to tell me what to do, especially when it comes to exercising my rights. And the second you do that, well, it's First Amendment. No, you have foregone your First Amendment rights when you use them to infringe upon the rights held by other people.
It's what's known as the Fighting Words document. We've explained this on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer as well. But people like Donald Trump don't care. And then his followers sit there and say that we're not adhering to the United States Constitution. Well, far be it from me to say that those who follow a little orange man who doesn't care about the Constitution itself, who said that he saw no value in it, I'm not going to take their word for it. I will take the fact that I'm a licensed attorney and have done First Amendment issues in my short career. I think I understand how it works. And it's funny. These people want to sit there and say they know more than people who have studied the Constitution. They want to say they know more than Nelson. They want to say they know more than you, Jeremy. And they damn sure want to say they know more than me. Well, where is the proof? Because if the proof is in the pudding, the only thing I see here is excrement pudding, and nobody wants to have that. I know I sure as hell don't.
Well, sure. And again, we have to look at these individuals who want to tell us to shut up. It's like you said, Randy, it's the fighting words doctrine. It boils down to when anybody exercises their constitutional rights to infringe upon anybody else's rights, that's known as a crime.
Mm-hmm.
That is known as a crime. In fact, there are 2 federal statutes, 3 if you really want to think about it in a civil procedure, but look at Title 18 U.S. Code sections 241 and 242. You have the deprivation of rights, and then you have, I can't think of the name of the title of the other one, but conspiracy against rights.
Yeah.
It's conspiracy against rights and then the deprivation of rights. And then the third one, which could be utilized as the civil remedy through civil court, is known as Bivens, or Title 42 U.S. Code Section 1983.
Mm-hmm.
You file a Bivens suit against them. Why? You can get monetary damages, compensatory damages, for someone violating your rights. Now, if Eric Bowling still wants to pursue this, that's fine. You want to play the game, Mr. Bowling? You want to sit there and think that you know so much about the Constitution? You know so much about this? Why don't you go ahead and assemble your all-star quaff team of Little Orphan Annie Yap Yap Toto, and go ahead and get Jerry Rivers, a.k.a. I Can't Find a Vault to Save My Ass, Geraldo Rivera,
Mm-hmm.
and anybody else you could think of. Now, grab Judge Janine while you're at it. Let's make it fair for you. Give you at least a fighting chance.
Take the leprechaun with you.
And let you have at least a little bit of a fighting chance, because I guarantee you this, I won't lose. You know why I won't lose? Because I understand the Constitution more than all of you combined. That is a fact, and if you want to dispute that fact, please come on our show. Bring everybody with you. We would love to have you. It would be a jolly old good time.
Well, you know they're not going to do it. They never have, they never will. They don't have the fortitude to do so. But what it comes down to is they're the ones that want to claim that Trump's an outsider, yet they act exactly the way the so-called establishment or detente wing of the gutless opposition party or GOP has in election cycle after election cycle. They want to tell us what to do. They want to tell us how to vote. They say we have to do anything and everything right down to the line of how they would do it. Why? Where is it written in stone that I have to do what some stupid moron, pundit, or commensurate on television is telling me to do? I am a free individual popular sovereign. I have earned my own right in my own way to think for myself. That is the way that it has always meant to be in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic. These people are the same types that would probably sit here and claim that we are a democracy. They're the same ones that would try and say that everything that we learn in school is the way that it is. You know, it's fascinating to me that it's now become, in this nation, a radical or fundamentalist position to want to return to strict adherence to the Constitution at all levels of government. That it is now some sort of radical fundamentalist position to want to enforce the laws that are on the books. You know, all of these people that are sitting there thinking that Trump is going to be their grand savior, their grand quaff-waffling father from above, are going to be in for a very nasty surprise come this general election or shortly thereafter, because he is not going to live up to any of the hype that has been pushed around him because he doesn't care. Really what it comes down to is he has just done this for himself. As his own former director of this rather dubious super PAC that he shut down at the end of last year said, he was never once actually interested in winning the nomination or actually vying for the highest office in the land. This was all supposed to be some sort of an ego trip for him. Well, that means that he's A, either a narcissist, or B, he is on a power trip, or C, he's on all three. He has allowed his ego to skyrocket out of control, and that will not play out well for the American people. We've already seen how he's waffled on issues to try and get it to where he is in some position that will benefit himself, because that's part of being a deal maker. That's part of everything being negotiable. But remember what we've said on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Our fundamental and inalienable rights are non-negotiable. They're non-delegable. And our Constitution and its interpretation is non-negotiable.
Yeah. And see, that's the funny thing. I'm glad you brought up the interpretation of the Constitution, because all of these individuals, they want to sit here, and these are the same individuals that say, well, it's the Supreme Court's job to interpret the Constitution, and when they make their ruling, that's the supreme law, that's the law of the land. Well, I'm sorry, but you have no idea what the word interpretation means. As a matter of fact, the Ninth Amendment prohibits the Constitution from being interpreted. Why?
They don't care.
Oh, no, they don't care. Yeah, but Trump. And then they want to say that Supreme Court rulings are the supreme law of the land. Why? Because they can't separate the word supreme away from court and apply it in its true context pertaining to the Supremacy Clause, Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which holds that all rulings, anything, remember folks, any being separate from the word thing being capitalized, showing possession or an actual entity, an issue, that is contrary to the Constitution, is notwithstanding, meaning it cannot exist. It is void. So if there's a Supreme Court ruling, which there are many of them, that are contrary to the Constitution, that ruling is not applicable. It is unenforceable. It cannot legally exist and carry any weight whatsoever in the legal rule. That's how that works. But they want to, well, that's your interpretation. No, that is verbatim what the Constitution says.
Well,
Word
it's because
for word.
they play into these twisted games of semantics. Again, that's why we said, going back to our first episode, that semantics can be so deadly and dangerous. It's because it can lead you astray from the truth. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. When you look at what these people are trying to do, when you look at those forces that continuously try and divorce us from the true, clear, and concise language contained within the four corners of the Constitution, they are the ones that create these problems. And then for those that want to sit there and say that the economy is the number one issue, why is the economy in shambles? Why are we struggling right now with the economy? It's because the government is far too involved in our business. It's strangling business with overzealous regulations, with these unconstitutional organizations like the EPA, since we mentioned Nixon earlier, like all of these trade embargoes and whatnot. Trump would be pushing that too. Remember, he said that he wanted to push a tariff. Well, who ultimately is going to pay this 35% tariff? It always comes back on the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. It will fall back onto our shoulders. We will be the ones, as the consumers, to carry this out. And that is unacceptable. Because if we allow that to happen, it means that we're going to be put in an even more precarious situation. And again, why? Because we are divorcing ourselves from the strict application of the Constitution. Strict adherence to the Constitution is what would cure 99.9% of the problems that we face, both as a nation and as a people.
And the other 0.1% just happens to be the people that are holding elected office. You get back to the Constitution, which, like you said, is 99.9% of the solution. The other 0.1% of the solution, getting rid of that 0.1%, removing them from office. Those that do not want to adhere to the Constitution, enforce it. That's part of the problem. Now, when you mention the economy as being, and really, folks, the economy is nothing more than a subsection or a sub-issue of the main issue, being that our Constitution is not being followed. You follow the Constitution, the economy will fix itself. And here's why. I'll give you an example. And Randy, I just learned this the other night from talking with our first Air Marshal, Nelson Ward.
Uh-huh.
Part of the problem why our economy is in shambles is because states have been allowed to enter into compacts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that creates such a huge issue, because when states are allowed to enter into compacts, what does that do? It actually takes the authority away from the states as sovereign individuals and allows the government to have overreach or gain control or authority over the states. And when the government is allowed to do this, and I believe there's actually a Supreme Court ruling that would actually fit right into this perfectly. Wickard v. Vilburn.
Mm-hmm.
And
the
with
Dormant Commerce Clause.
The Dormant Commerce Clause. That gave the government the authority, because of that, because of a compact and because of that ruling and so on and so forth, which, by the way, folks, that's one of the rulings that is considered to be unconstitutional and have no standing, because it allowed the government to usurp the authority of the states regarding to intrastate commerce, meaning commerce within the state itself, within its own borders. Mm-hmm. So, when you have instances like that, and that's just one example, does that impact the economy? Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. In a small way, but here's the things. It's the little things that kill.
Well, it's because they all add up. When you look at the way this is meant to work, the whole impetus behind the economy is that we, as popular sovereigns, are supposed to be able to exercise our best abilities, our ingenuity, our creativity, to build for ourselves, to become successful for ourselves. That is what it means to be truly equal, to have the equal opportunity to work towards building something. It doesn't mean equal outcomes, because no one is going to have equal outcomes. You are going to have to be able to do something based on your ability to do it. And, you shouldn't take money away from someone else to provide for that. You should operate within the confines of the Constitution, which is designed to allow that to flourish. You see, that was the brilliance behind the United States Constitution. It was designed to protect us from the type of chicanery that our founding fathers knew would become an inevitable part of government, because there is this sense of entropy that just becomes an inherent part of what government does. Government, by its very nature, is diametrically opposed to the people. Why? Because its existence is that of a parasite. It's a parasitic relationship with the people. Government cannot exist without sucking out of us. Mm-hmm. And our founding fathers tried to keep that to a very bare minimum. But as time has gone on, particularly after Abraham Lincoln, we saw that just expand. And through exponential leaps and bounds in successive generations, we saw that it was continued to be broadened. And that is that the government kept amassing power for itself in illicit fashion, and it was always the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, we the people of the United States, that suffered the brunt of what they were taking away. They were taking power from us without just compensation.
And Randy, what you just alluded to there is basically the simplistic way of explaining communism.
Oh, yes.
Because you mentioned, a person making money, prospering for themselves, thinking for themselves, doing this and that, and then taking that money and actually using it to raise somebody else up to that level. Folks, if you want true equality, it's just like Randy said in earlier segments, true equality is actually found in the Constitution. It's equal protection under the law. That means the law applies to everybody in an equal fashion. Why? Because you cannot hold somebody else's rights above somebody else's rights. That would be to disparage the rights of another individual. And when you do that, you are creating what's called a protected class. You cannot afford rights to a certain group of individuals over somebody else. That is what, when you do that, not only is that communistic in nature, because you're depriving individuals from their property in order to make things equal across the board in a materialistic fashion, but now you are essentially creating a pseudo-democracy, or ultimately a democracy, which is diametrically opposed to what our country is. We are a constitutional representative republic. There's no term whatsoever, nowhere in the Constitution is the word democracy mentioned at all.
Yeah, it's because our founding fathers considered a democracy to be a mobocracy, that it worked against the best interests of the American people. And the reason that they believe that is a democracy by its very nature only recognizes the rights of the majority, whereas a representative republic recognizes and protects the rights of the sovereign individual. Mm-hmm. That is the major distinguishment that needs to be fleshed out. But ever since the Civil War, we've seen this loose-knit use of the term democracy. Everybody wants to say that the United States is a democracy. But as you said, you will find it in Article 9, Section Existent, Clause 0, that the United States is a democracy. That's because, as Benjamin Franklin said when asked what he has given us, or what the Founding Fathers gave us, he said, "We have given you a republic if you can keep it." Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to fall squarely on our shoulders to keep the republic. And right now, that's become exceedingly difficult.
Yes, and another reason why this points to communism is just like you said, you brought up the Civil War. Well, it wasn't, 20 years or so, give or take, 20, 30 years prior to the Civil War, where communism was actually notated and logged with the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. So that all started in Europe, and again, we have to point back to Dobbs and Archibald Roosevelt here, and our research with those two individuals, and going even back into Lincoln, to where there were Marxists working within our own federal government.
Lincoln even had open correspondence with Karl Marx.
Yes, and that's stuff that is not taught in schools anymore. This is why our educational system is useless, absolutely useless. And I can't think of a better way of saying it. Why is it useless? It's
because of the historical revisionists, because of the Fabian socialists who just want to destroy everything.
Because
political correctness is all part of that.
Yes, that is the umbrella. That's the umbrella.
Well, it's the linchpin.
Yeah,
it is the linchpin that holds together this web of deceit, this wheel of deceit. Basically, you can spin this wheel of deceit and see that it always goes back to the nefarious left-wingers that have done everything in their power to push this nation towards the type of despotism that Karl Marx imagined. Remember that he called it the dictatorship of the proletariat. Well, America is diametrically opposed to dictatorships, because a dictatorship by its very nature has to go towards a centralized power, a top-down style of authority. Well, that is not what we are. That was never what our founding fathers intended. In fact, if you recall, what it was that we were fighting all throughout that long, bloody, drawn-out struggle known as the American War of Independence was the centralized authority of the crown. So therefore, they were risking everything, including their sacred honors, to defeat a centralized authority. It's why the Articles of Confederation didn't want to give any type of authority or monetary ability to the central government, because they loathed and despised the thought of a central authority. They knew that ultimately it would be driven to corruption. And of course, the reason that it would be driven to corruption is because that is the natural state of government. Government always comes to be diametrically opposed to everything that the individual stands for. Why? Because it has to survive off of the individual, as I mentioned in that previous segment.
The parasite host.
Yes. It comes down to a leeching type of system that is all about destruction. And you see, that's why the Fabian socialists are destructive. They cannot exist and vie for viability in the marketplace of ideas. So therefore, they have to go down the typical left-wing path of destroying everything that was in the path before them, working to destroy everything that we stand for.
This comes right back to the thuggery that we spoke about earlier, and the gang mentality. They cannot stand on their own 2 feet, therefore they have to band together to take down a common threat. And
it's all about theft, because socialism is theft by any other name. And that's why, again, it's so important to have that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of the Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and inalienable rights. That way you can stand up to these people and say no. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. We guarantee she's not a thug. And you will be able to enjoy that as always. Folks, I'm your Captain, Randy Wright, and as always, I've been joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you might have, either here on our YouTube page or on our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. On top of this, we invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle of @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. There you'll find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of Jeremy, our Blogspot page, and our Cafe Press account that has all sorts of trinkets and goodies like hats, apparels, drinking glasses to enjoy your non-thuggish extra shot of alcohol, or our first-class passenger logo, which will show that you, too, are a free-thinking individual and don't want to buy into the Eric Bolling Trumpspiracy type of collectivist mentality. So, folks, go ahead and take a look at that and give us a little bit of support so we can continue to bring you this indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment that we always do. Thank you again. We'll see you next time. Do take care.